Christianity is life. And then he goes on and says, Christianity is life. Well, it's life and then death and then life again. You're just like, you eat the body of a dead dude. You drink his blood. You put him up on a cross for everybody to see. You're fixated on hell and heaven and the afterlife. And you tell people that don't worry about how miserable your life is because it's all about you're going to be better after death. And he calls atheism the religion of death, which is hysterical because it's not a religion and it's not about death. It's actually about life. What are your thoughts about all that?
I completely, everything you just said wraps up what I feel. Susan Perry, who is a wonderful author and humanist, wrote an article a long time ago that said that, in her view, Christianity is nothing but a death cult because they surround themselves, and like you just said, they hang figures of death. They eat, quote unquote, flesh and drink blood, and it is driven by dying. They see dying as this wonderful thing, and then you pass through, and then there's like life again. But it's all driven by that point of death, and they scare you with it the whole time. Oh, are you going to die and go to heaven or hell? And you're right. Like, Mr. Oz Atheist on Twitter had a saying, and I'm kind of going to paraphrase it probably, but he said, he's not afraid of dying. So like, I'm gonna really screw up his quote, so I'm not even gonna try to quote it. But the essence is that he understands we have one life to live, so he's devoted to living it to its fullest.
Right.
And that's what we're all about, because we know that death is the end. So we don't want death to come. We fight to prolong it. We have scientific medicine to prolong death. We don't die at 35 anymore. Yep. It's because we want to be alive. We want to enjoy this time we have. And we only do that by celebrating life. Yep. And so, not only is he wrong about religion and atheism, which is a funny thing for a religious person to, criticize atheism for being a religion, but he's just wrong about our worldview, and he knows he's wrong. It's a good donation tagline for him.
Sure. Now, if I can segue into politics, we're coming up on elections in just a few months. It was curious, back, I think, around January of 2016, my daughter came to me and she said, when is the election? And I said, November. And she goes, oh, fuck, I got to read this shit for 10 more months? I said, yes, you do. Apparently, you're a huge Jill Stein supporter. Do I have that right?
You had that right.
I figured I'd have a little fun with you there. What's going on, man? You shifting sand under your feet? What?
I always had an underlying issue with the Green Party, and even Stein to a degree, with the sort of party's conspiracy theory base. You have this older. It's an older white party for the most part, sadly. But they are very skeptical of modern medicine and modern science. But you have this younger base, which is much more diverse, without much vocal support. They're kind of fighting their way up. So when you find small groups, you can find them. But over in the big arching party itself, they're still a little bit more silenced. But they always reached out to me and said, we love your articles that are criticizing our anti-science views. We really agree. Like, thank you for helping give us a voice. And so I stayed really involved in the party because I never thought they could win. That's, I have no misconception that Jill Stein's going to beat Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. She's just not.
Right.
But
she's not even going to beat Gary Johnson.
No. But she was, I liked the party's base message of taking care of the environment, fighting for workers, fighting for immigrants. And I thought they should stay on those messages and fight for those things, because you can push parties with those kinds of messages. And when parties feel threatened by losing voters, they tend to say, oh, well, what issues are you talking about, and try to adopt them. So I thought they had a really good platform to use. And then Jill decided that with all this new fame that she was getting, because she very strategically got a lot of media publicity at the Democratic convention, all this stuff started coming out that just was kind of buried and, didn't really seem to matter until they came out, and she really started doubling down on them. So her stance on vaccines, GMOs, Wi-Fi in schools.
Wi-Fi, I mean, that shit
just
dangerous.
Really, yeah, I mean, really, she just pulled out the tinfoil hat and said, be afraid of science.
I was just going to say, we're getting in the tinfoil hat territory now.
Yep. And so I reached out to the campaign, of which I have a lot of contacts with, and said, let's clarify these, because I felt like there's no way this Harvard-educated medical doctor could believe these things. So she must have just misspoken or been taken out of context, and let's clear this up. And she then did an interview with Washington Post, and she just doubled down. And it just kept getting worse. And as much as I love her views, like I said, on the environment, on workers' rights, and the fight for 15, and all these things, I pride myself on science advocacy. And if she's going to platform on just asking questions, I'm not going to stand by and support that. And so I withdrew my support for her and said, look, I agree with all these things that you do, and I'm going to keep fighting for them. I'm just not going to do it with you, because you're also going to give these weapons to anti-vaxxers to say, look, even this Harvard-trained medical doctor thinks that we should be asking these questions.
Right. Now, what do you think about Trump's stance on global warming as a Chinese conspiracy?
Oh, he's probably totally right. Oh, man, in my opinion, we're in a lose-lose situation with this election. But I can't say it's lose-lose in the sense of if she was running against someone like McCain. Like McCain being like a pretty crazy Republican, but sometimes moderate, who, if he was to win against someone like Clinton, we would have a lot of work to do as activists, for social justice and for LGBTQ rights, but it wouldn't be as detrimental as others. Where Trump is just this whole new beast I think we've never seen before.
No, we've not. As a matter of fact, it's funny that you mentioned McCain, because there have been times in the past I have actually voted for McCain. I thought he was an upstanding guy. He's a decorated war hero, and took his turn in the military, something that I'm too much of a coward to do. And I don't have to agree with him on everything, but seemed to like the guy. But that last time he ran for president, he just seemed to be completely off the rails. And then, of course, he picks what's-her-face from Alaska, who reads every newspaper in print.
Every single one of them.
All of them, Katie, all of them. And I recently saw on CNN this video of some guy. Apparently, he was an attorney, and he's a Trump spokesperson. And listeners, if you've not seen this, what did says who is the tagline? Says who?
Oh, some polls. Well, all the polls. Says who?
Says who?
I just told you all the polls.
Says who?
And then he literally goes, says who?
You know what? I'll do when you and I are done. Before I end the show, I'll play the soundbite. But listeners, you must go and find this on your own, because you need to see the expressions on the CNN hostess, I guess it was what we'll call her. Her face is so priceless, because she should get an Emmy for that. That was unbelievable. And the first time I saw it, someone had put a link, and I saw it on somebody's wall, and I watched it. I shit you not, I thought it was an SNL parody.
It doesn't look. It can't be real. This guy had to have been paid to do that. It is so outrageous. It's hilarious.
I was like, okay, this is not even really funny, because it's so bad. SNL's slipping, right? And then I found out a day or two later that wasn't a parody. That was the actual thing. And like I said, I'll play it. I'll rip the audio for that, and I'll play it at the end of the show. But you do need to see it. You must get the full visual experience.
And on that same show, she also had Ben Shapiro on, a former Breitbart editor.
Yeah. Is it Breitbart? I thought it was Breitbart.
Breitbart? I'm not sure. Shitbart, whatever it is. Yeah. Awful news source. But he was on there, and he called Trump a turd tornado on live TV.
Yeah.
And the host, she did not know what to do with that.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was pretty funny, because it was one of those things where she goes, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Because she's genuinely like, I couldn't have heard that right. And then she says, what did you say? And he goes, turd tornado. And she goes, what is a turd tornado?
Tornado?
Totally straight face, right? And he goes, like a Sharknado, but with shit. Oh, wow. That was, you're right. That's also a very, very good one. And I've got one more topic. You got a few more minutes?
I do.
I know we've had a couple internet delays, but the other thing that I put up just a little snarky thing on my Facebook, and apparently David Smalley had a very similar little mini podcast for about 15 minutes just a couple days before that I hadn't heard yet. But I'm getting this thing now where multiple times in the last few weeks I've gotten, some are requests, some are demands that I must now go unfriend somebody that I'm friends with because the person asking me has had a disagreement with them. And in some cases, the disagreement is downright, I don't know, mean-spirited, rude, and the other person is really being a dick or an asshole or whatever. But the idea that, if you argue with somebody and you don't want to talk to them anymore, fine, unfriend them. But why invite every single person that you know? Have you had this experience at all?
I have, and it's, I to a degree, I understand the initial reaction to that, because when a friend that is part of your group really attacks you, you sort of feel like your other friends have a loyalty to stay with you and out them. But that should be something that comes and goes really quickly, and you don't actually ask your friends to do. You feel like they're supposed to, and then they don't, and then you realize they're not going to, and they're not supposed to either, because these disagreements become something of their own. And you know what? I could watch a disagreement between two people and lose complete respect for the person that is wrong and unfriend them on my own if I feel that that's necessary. But what does that serve to tell your friends to unfriend them? Because not only are you then just having your friends dictate who your friends are, but you're losing the opportunity to talk to that person that still likes you. So they can have person A and B can have a total falling out, and B is wrong, and you have a chance to talk to B about what happened, and maybe you can correct their thinking, or at least plant the doubt that maybe they were wrong.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about in my Facebook post, but I was actually kind of really saddened by the number of people that got on there and said, what are you talking to these people for anyway? You're not going to make a difference. And since you're not going to make a difference, you're just wasting your time, and you might as well unfriend them and, basically hide back in your bubble and not talk to other human beings. It really kind of made me sad.
It does. I see it happens a lot. We just talked about the election, but I see a lot of, look, if you're on my friend list and you are thinking about voting for Trump, you should just go ahead and unfriend me now.
Yeah, but they're probably right.
But why?
Why make it that way?
Why make it that way? Why not reach out to that person that's voting Trump and ask them why? Maybe it could be a multitude of reasons. Maybe they do actually hate LGBTQ people or Muslims or all these things, and you realize maybe you two shouldn't be friends. You don't have a common interest, and you're better splitting ways. Maybe they're actually ignorant of half these things. Maybe they don't pay attention to politics like you do, or they purposely live outside of the politics bubble because they hate politics, but they heard a couple things and they were misinformed. And like, oh, well, maybe I should listen to that. An anecdote I could use is my sister, who is very liberal, had seen me post a few times, and I was really unhappy with some of Obama's policies and stuff leading up to 2012.
Right.
And she sent me a message and said, who should I vote for in the coming election? Romney? And I shook. I was like, what? Because her only takeaway was that I was unhappy with Obama, so I must be voting for the person against him. And she was looking for that advice. So we don't know that person didn't just reach out to somebody and say, man, this election really sucks. Who should I vote for? And someone goes, oh, I'm voting for Trump because of his tax policy. And they go, oh, cool, me too. And then they never look again. So we miss opportunities to have conversations like that with people and say, did you know he wants to do this? Or we miss conversations to tell people that you're wrong about his immigration policy, and let's talk about why his immigration policy is wrong, and maybe you can change their mind, or change the mind of someone watching you to converse online if that's how you're doing it.
One of my favorites is this idea that he's a great businessman. And so I love sharing links to people about the stories of how his business empire didn't grow and how he's lost money and filed bankruptcy and money just came in from Daddy and